Australia's mountains, havens of fertility on the world's driest continent. From Lamington's ancient, misty forests to rare and enchanting creatures in the Australian Alps. From the Blue Mountains, where canyons conceal secrets from the age of dinosaurs, to Tasmania, where pristine lakes and majestic peaks grace one of the world's greatest wilderness areas. This is wild, untamed Australia. These are marvels of the mountains. Snow, ice, blizzards. The little-known face of Australia. A startling contrast in a land renowned for its flat plains and searing deserts. Peaking at little more than 2,200 meters, the Australian Alps are modest in height, but their wonders are great indeed. They embrace 9 national parks and 15,000 square kilometers. It's a vast, wild place where you can still feel alone in the world. From snowy peaks to wooded foothills, a wondrous variety of plants and animals is found in these mountains. It was this high country that gave birth to the legend of the man from Snowy River. The rugged men of the mountains and the wild horses they chased inspired Banjo Paterson's landmark poem more than a century ago. So Clancy rode to wheel them. He was racing on the wing, where the best and boldest riders take their place. And he raced his stock horse past them, and he made the ranges ring with the stock whip as he met them face to face. Then he halted for a moment while he swung the dreaded lash. But they saw their well-loved mountain full in view, and they charged beneath the stock whip with a sharp and sudden dash, and off into the mountain scrub they flew. Generations of Australians have revelled in Banjo Paterson's story of courage and determination, now entrenched in our folklore, symbolising the resilient Australian spirit. The stockman's history on these mountains is merely a blink in time for the Alps. Their geological history goes back more than 600 million years, making them older than the European Alps and the Himalayas. Water has carved through the highlands, creating thickly forested valleys, favoured feeding grounds for many different animals. A family of grey kangaroos grazes on the spring-fed grasses of the lower slopes. Nearby, a wombat keeps warm in its underground home. It's the world's largest burrowing marsupial. Elsewhere, wombats feed at night, but in the Alps they spend the cold nights underground and forage in the warmth of the sun. Other creatures prefer life at the top. Traveling from treetop to treetop in search of blossom, the yellow-bellied glider can plane up to 140 meters. Like a hang glider, it stays airborne with flaps of skin that stretch from its ankles between its fore and hind paws. Four different types of glider live here in the alpine parks, feeding mainly on nectar and sap. While the lower slopes support plants and animals found commonly in Australia, the peaks have a look all of their own. Nothing characterizes the Alps more than the snow gum. It's a eucalypt, among the most adaptable plants on Earth. Gnarled, calloused and bent by the buffeting winds, the snow gum can survive the most extreme alpine conditions. While plant life remains exposed to the brunt of winter, animal life either migrates down to warmer slopes or goes to ground. Beneath a 1-meter layer of insulating snow, the spaces between rocks and soil remain a constant 2 degrees Celsius. This is a haven for the mountain pygmy possum, one of the few mammals that can survive here, and the only marsupial to store food for winter. It's unique to the Alps and is so rare that until 1966 it was believed extinct. Another rare animal, found only in the Alps, is the corroboree frog. Named for its markings, which resemble Aboriginal body painting, each frog has a unique pattern. The corroboree frog is a most unusual frog. Most frogs jump, but not this one. And most frogs swim, but not this one. Sadly, the exceptional corroboree frog is also Australia's most endangered amphibian. Drip by drip, winter melts away. Snow waters that sustain life in the mountains also became a resource to nourish the parched inland. The Snowy Mountains hydroelectric scheme, started in 1949, was the greatest engineering project of its time. Working conditions were tough, especially in winter. Rivers that flowed to the coast were completely reversed to flow inland. Over 25 years, 12 tunnels were blasted through the mountains. "16 dams were built to collect water for irrigation, and 7 power stations to convert falling waters into hydroelectricity. "100,000 workers from more than 30 countries poured into what had been the undisturbed pastoral realm of the high country stockmen. The new workers created their own snowy river legend. Despite a century and a half of human endeavour, the Alps have retained their untamed character. This rooftop of Australia remains a vast, rugged wilderness and a spectacular playground where spirits can soar. The year is 1994. A park ranger abseils down canyons in the Blue Mountains of New South Wales. He is about to make the botanical discovery of the century. The journey takes him through an eerie yet beautiful world of deep, dark canyons, a place rarely, if ever, visited before. He comes across a tree like no other he's ever seen. It's the plant equivalent of a living, breathing dinosaur. Protected within a fortress of sandstone, standing alone in a sea of eucalypt trees, this prehistoric species has survived in a lost world for millions of years. The Blue Mountains, 10,000 square kilometres, 5 national parks, a World Heritage Area, and all this only 100 kilometres from Australia's largest city, Sydney. Each year, more than 3 million people come here, most to see the mountain's sandstone icon, the Three Sisters. A scenic railway, the steepest funicular incline in the world, plunges over the escarpment into the lush undergrowth. Once it carried coal mined from the base of the cliffs. Now the payload is sightseers. Suspended high above the valley, a cable car offers another breathtaking glimpse of the glorious sisters. Spectacular though the vista may be, beyond there lies a vast wilderness awaiting discovery, places so remote that few people ever see them. Walls of sandstone protect a magnificent natural world. Mountains are an enormous sandstone plateau. Over eons, running water cut through this soft rock to form deep canyons. Some so deep that if the Empire State Building were dropped in, only its mast would be visible. Timeless winds added their force to shape the most remarkable sculptures. In a little-known area of the mountains lies a lost city of temples, the Gardens of Stone National Park. These extraordinary formations of fragile, sandblasted stone are known as pagodas for their resemblance to Asian temples. The mighty cliffs of Canangra Boyd tower more than half a kilometre over the valley floor. Although this plateau has but a thin veneer of sandy soil, remarkably, it supports a heath studded with wildflowers of extraordinary diversity. But it is here in the eucalypt forests that abundant wildlife is found. Black cockatoos ride the wind currents, endlessly searching for edible plants. In the lower forests, koalas sleep away the day in the treetops, occasionally feasting on their favorite gum leaves. Red-necked wallabies favor open woodlands in the valleys, where grass is plentiful. Emus prefer the drier foothills, where they feed on grass, seeds, berries and blossoms. The blueness of the Blue Mountains comes from the gum trees themselves. Vapor from oil in their leaves fills the atmosphere and produces the distinctive color. Eucalypts or gums are so dominant they make up half of all native trees in Australia. In the Blue Mountains alone, there are 90 different types. These distinctively Australian trees have one common feature: they burn. A lightning strike deep in the forest, or maybe an arsonist's match, and before long, the mountains are ablaze. Oil in the leaves acts like kerosene on the flames. In rugged country, there's little that can be done to stop bushfires. Large fires burn for days, even weeks. The forests are reduced to charred, leafless trees and scorched earth. But all is not as black as it seems. Within days, new life appears. Grass trees are the first plants to produce new shoots. Eucalypts soon follow. Their survival secret is an ability to repair damage rapidly. Many gums send out new shoots directly from the mature trunk, producing energy until the crown recovers. Within days, ants emerge to feast on what's left from the fire. And when things have cooled down, lizards come out of their bunkers to get on with life. The grass trees have their own special way of adapting to fire. Resin and charred leaves melt together to insulate the living heart of the plant, allowing new shoots to emerge. In a matter of months, the forest is well on the way to recovery. This cycle of devastation and renewal is part of the timeless story of the Australian bush. The Blue Mountains are a life source too for the people of Sydney. The Nepean River was dammed to form Lake Burragarang, a body of water 4 times larger than Sydney Harbour. The city's tap water begins here as streams on the Blue Mountains Plateau, filtering through deep fern-lined gullies of porous sandstone. Here, in moist, sun-sheltered canyons, far from the ravages of bushfire, botanical time stands still. Warm, temperate rainforest flourishes in this dark, wet world. These canyons harbour plants long since lost elsewhere. Such curiosities are irresistible to John Benson, a plant ecologist with Sydney's Royal Botanic Gardens.
That's right, same family though.
Yeah. You get them up.
And you've got all the toadias along the here and everything.
Yeah, they're still there.
Little lilies and ferns on the edge of the canyon.
With guide Sophie Davis, he explores the canyons in search of living treasures.
There are about 500 or so canyons in the Blue Mountains. They're located in a 500,000 hectare wilderness area, and many of them very few people have been in before.
Very gently, that's it. And that's fantastic. Okay.
It was after dropping into a canyon like this one on September the 10th, 1994, that a park ranger made a momentous discovery.
He had abseiled down a narrow canyon into a larger canyon, and he was walking down the creek in that canyon where he saw some very unusual foliage that he did not recognise. It was totally different from every other plant around.
The ranger had discovered the Wallamai pine. Known to science only as a fossil, the tree was believed to have been extinct for millions of years. It was like no other tree, with branches like a Christmas tree and bark like bubbling chocolate. It took the biological world by storm. But there were just 76 Wallamai pines. Could this species, newly back from the dead, disappear as quickly as it had been found? It might be vulnerable to disease after so long in isolation. A radical plan was devised to ensure its survival. the National Park Service and the Royal Botanic Gardens joined forces to grow the Wollemi pine commercially. Seed had to be collected from the only place it is found, at the very tops of the largest trees. As a result of these extraordinary efforts, scientists like John Benson are now confident the Wollemi pine has a better chance of survival.
And we have a number of seedlings here and cuttings that have been taken from the wild populations. And we hope that by 2005, about 30,000 Wollemi pines will be released to the public, and by 2010, perhaps up to 2 million.
And who knows, one of the rarest plants on the planet may soon become a common garden tree. Remarkably, the Wollemi pine was discovered in a wilderness just 100 kilometres from a city of 4 million people. To have such a wilderness so close is a privilege. To find such a rare tree surviving within it is miraculous. What other natural treasures await discovery in the Blue Mountains National Parks? Nestled in the border ranges between New South Wales and Queensland, at an altitude of more than 1,000 metres, lies another piece of the past, a place that reveals how most of Australia looked millions of years ago. The slopes of Lamington National Park, drenched in more than 2 metres of rain each year, cradle remnants of an ancient forest that once spanned the entire continent. Lamington, covering 200 square kilometres, lies at the heart of the Central Eastern Rainforest Reserve's World Heritage Area, the largest tract of subtropical rainforest in the world. The warm, wet climate harbours a great diversity of plant life. Massive vines snake their way around tree trunks, hitching their way upwards to the canopy. The giant stinger, growing 45 metres tall and with leaves the size of dinner plates, is the world's largest stinging plant. With fronds outstretched, bird's nest ferns draw nutrients from leaves raining down from above. Here among this lushness, there's a dazzling array of birds. More than 120 species occupy this dappled emerald world. Rainforest has existed here for more than 50 million years, since the time when Australia was still part of the southern supercontinent, Gondwana. Many of today's plants, like eucalypts and banksias, evolved from rainforest species. So too did birds, like emus and parrots. Over millions of years, Australia gradually dried out. Rainforest plants withered away on the continent's vast plains, but survived in wet mountains like these. Australia became a dry land of eucalypts, grassland, acacias and deserts, but in refuges like Lamington, life went on as if nothing had changed. Where there's moisture, you find frogs. Like so many others, the rocket frog has maintained its place in this forest home. Able to leap almost 100 times its own body length, it's earned its place as nature's champion long jumper. The forest floor is a shady arena for all forms of competition. The Satin Bower Bird competes for a mate with great skill. He's nature's most amorous architect, and his bower is not a nest, but a boudoir. In the world of the Satin Bower Bird, nothing attracts the ladies more than bright blue ornaments of any kind. By investing such energy in decorating, the male demonstrates that he's a good provider and an ideal catch. What looks chaotic to us has an order known only to the bowerbird. Oblivious to the aesthetic arrangement before him, a brush turkey blunders through. Once the coast is clear, the bowerbird has no choice but to start all over again. The brush turkey also has breeding on his mind. His summer obsession is nest building. With powerful legs, he piles dead leaves into mounds more than 1 meter high and 4 meters wide. It's the male which is responsible for the protection and incubation of the eggs. To attract as many hens as possible, he must keep his fermenting pile at exactly 33 degrees Celsius. To monitor this ideal incubation temperature, he uses heat sensors built into the upper side of his mouth. He either rakes material from the top to allow heat to escape, or adds leaf litter to increase the mound's rate of fermentation. Where the brush turkey was once the home invader, the tables are about to be turned. The carpet python is the forest's feared nest robber. But the brush turkey is a plucky character. His nest is his castle, and any intruder must first get past him. While it may be after eggs, the python is also capable of snatching and suffocating an adult turkey with a deadly squeeze of its coils. This would-be thief will think twice before he takes on another turkey. Further up the mountain, all is quiet as the mist rolls gently in. A mist which sustains a most rare and ancient community of trees, the Antarctic beech. This is another vestige of wetter climes, another echo from millions of years past. Lamington is one of only a handful of places in Australia where the Antarctic beech survives. Festooned with mosses, lichens and ferns, this place could be straight from the pages of Tolkien. These trees really are as ancient as they look. They put their roots down here more than 3,000 years ago. They encapsulate the marvel of Lamington National Park, a place where Australia's ancient past has been preserved for the wonder of generations to come. In 1936, in a zoo on the island of Tasmania, a remarkable animal called Benjamin died. Remarkable because despite the name, she was actually a female, and because though she looked like a dog, she had a pouch for her young, just like a kangaroo. Benjamin was a Tasmanian tiger, or thylacine. Most remarkably, she was the very last known of her kind. In official records, the Tasmanian tiger is extinct, but in people's hearts and hopes, it lives on. Only in a place as wild and inaccessible as Tasmania's wilderness is it even remotely possible that a creature might have survived for more than 60 years without us knowing. After all, this is a place known for its wondrous survivors. Tasmania is the domain of the extraordinary. Feisty marsupial carnivores. Extraordinarily rare birds, and highly elusive egg-laying mammals. Botanical wonders also abound. This gnarled old grandfather pine would have been a sapling when the Vikings invaded Britain. Australia's wildest landscape attracts its wildest weather, straight from the Antarctic. The tempestuous Southern Ocean isolated Tasmania from seagoers for centuries, protection that made the island a priceless refuge for plants and animals that occur nowhere else on the planet. Covering more than 13,000 square kilometres, much of this World Heritage Area was unmapped until the 1960s. It's one of the greatest wilderness areas on Earth. Time has sculpted glories like Cradle Mountain, jutting 1,500 meters into the sky. Here, nestled among the lofty pinnacles, are some of the purest lakes in the world. Their serene waters support abundant fish life and a century-old trout fishing tradition. It's a sanctuary of tranquility. Cradle Mountain is the starting point of one of the world's great treks, the 80-kilometre walk across the rooftop of Tasmania to Lake St Clair. It's a trek not just through spectacular scenery, but back thousands of years to witness the work of the last great ice age. These were the cataclysmic glacial conditions that carved out jagged peaks and fashioned the glorious lakes, more than 4,000 of them. In the ponderously slow progression of geological time, this event is incredibly recent. So recent, it was witnessed by Tasmania's Aborigines at least 12,000 years ago. Cradled among these geological gems are miniature worlds of enchanting beauty. The overland track meanders among rock-strewn creeks, shaded by myrtle trees. Tiger snakes, too, explore the streams in search of frogs and other prey. Beyond the forests, undulating heathlands, where forest grass trees have adapted to the high altitude. They're the largest heath plants in the world, growing eventually to 9 meters. At the other end of the overland trek, the jewel in the wilderness crown, Lake St Clair. It's 15 kilometers long, and at 200 meters is the deepest freshwater lake in Australia. Called Liawilina, sleeping water, by the Aborigines, its tranquility runs as deep and pure as its still, dark waters. Foraging at its banks, the extraordinary platypus, one of only 2 mammals in the world that lay eggs. Custom made for the water, it has a streamlined body, waterproof coat, webbed feet, and a tail that acts as a stabilizer. Platypus search for food in both lake and nearby creeks. while darkness limits the hunting success of most animals, it doesn't hinder this remarkable creature. By using electroreceptors in its bill, the platypus hones in on faint electrical signals emitted by shrimps, yabbies, and worms. Fish stirred up in its wake are quickly snapped up by a passing pied cormorant. Tasmania is one of the wettest places in Australia, second only to the wet tropics for its rainfall. Small, gentle streams gradually converge into the giant Franklin, snaking its way through glorious ravines on its way to the sea. Its moist banks are home to breathtakingly ancient vegetation. Once this area was thick with hewn pine, a remarkable native conifer and among the longest living organisms on Earth. These trees have been growing here for about 2,000 years. But the rare quality of its wood was to be its undoing. In colonial times, convicts were set to work logging the pine. It was found to have a resin which preserves against rotting and borers, perfect for boat building. Some hewn-built vessels still endure today, while the convicts, Australia's reluctant pioneers, have long gone. The only memorial to those days of logging Tasmania's ancient trees, the few remaining ruins of the penal settlement. Today, the waterways of the southwest are plied by a different breed of pioneer, men on a mission to save one of the rarest creatures on Earth. Biologist Jim Thomas is one of the leaders.
The orange-bellied parrot is very endangered. There are less than 200 birds in the wild, and they're all found in southwest Tasmania.
The parrot breeds only here and winters on the mainland. It's been the victim of feral predators like cats, and its mainland feeding grounds have been reduced by development. Three state governments and national park scientists have joined forces to try to reverse the trend. The birds are now being bred in captivity. The idea is to reintroduce them to this remote corner of Tasmania where they once occurred in their thousands. Today, birds will taste freedom for the first time, although it's not quite that easy. For several weeks, to acclimatize, they've lived in one of the world's most remote bird cages, and now it's roundup time.
Good catch. All right, who have we got here? It's really well coloured up. Look at that orange breast. He's black W, so he was bred in Tasmania.
Individuals are fitted with leg bands so that their movements can be tracked both here and on the mainland. To ease the parrots' passage into the wild, feeding tables are provided until they learn how to find grass seed for themselves. Unknown to the parrots, their every move is scrutinized to find out who stays around and who wanders away, who mates with whom, who returns, and who survives.
I rate the success of the program quite high. Birds have been captive bred, they've been released here, and we've had birds come back. So we are getting the results we want, and to improve those results, we need to concentrate our efforts more on captive breeding and releasing of the orange-bellied parrot.
While the orange-bellied parrot struggles to survive, another creature has successfully made Tasmania its stronghold. Echoing through the gorges come blood-curdling screams, cries that struck fear into the hearts of early settlers. Now we know that the noise came from a cranky little animal, the Tasmanian devil. 600 years ago, devils became extinct on mainland Australia when they clashed with the dingo, a more efficient hunter brought by a seafaring people from the north. In Tasmania, the devils faced a different threat when settlers did all they could to wipe them out, along with the thylacine. Unlike the thylacine, the Tasmanian devil held on and took the thylacine's position as the world's largest carnivorous marsupial. Devils take any kind of meat, dead or alive, and the first to find a carcass will claim it as its own. Its powerful jaws can exert a bite 4 times stronger than that of a similar-sized dog. With their acute sense of smell, others soon find the feast, and all hell breaks loose. Tiger quolls wait in the wings to scavenge on what might remain. Devils are masters of bluff. Their aggressive posturing rarely leads to bloodletting, but serves to establish a pecking order. Despite the earlier threats to its survival, the devil now thrives, with some 150,000 of them prowling the forests of Tasmania. Tasmania's wilderness, a vibrant island museum of animals and plants preserved by its isolation. Magnificent in its wild beauty and forgotten by time, Untamed Tasmania is one of the precious places on Earth.